Hello everybody and welcome to my NFC West record prediction video. If you haven't seen the rest of my record predictions, I've done all of the AFC and the NFC North and the NFC. But in this video, I'm breaking down every NFC West team and giving them a record prediction. So let's get right into this video. Starting off with the Arizona Cardinals, they're in a very sticky situation. They fired Cliff Kingsbury after last season. They went 4-13 in an overall terrible season, and Kyler Murray did unfortunately tear his ACL and will be out probably for the start of the year. The team was severely stunted on both sides of the ball. The Cardinals had the 30th worst offensive DVOA and the 24th worst defensive DVOA. After, of course, firing Cliff Kingsbury, they ended up hiring Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon as their new head coach, and Nick Rallis and Drew Petzings as their new offensive and defensive coordinators. They lost a lot of key players of the offseason, including DeAndre Hopkins, Zach Allen, and Byron Murphy. Not to mention J.J. Watt also retired after this offseason. With their biggest free agent signing being Kaiser White, they really didn't add anybody in free agency and are looking towards the rebuild. And obviously looking at their offensive depth chart, it doesn't ring positive news. Kyle Murray's coming off of a torn ACL. The running back room is only one deep with James Conner. They have one of the shortest wide receiver rooms in the league, with Hollywood Brown being 5'9" and Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch being both 5'7". Not to mention Zach Ertz is also coming off of a torn ACL, and their interior offensive line has been depleted. But hopefully we'll see rookie Paris Johnson, who was drafted 6th overall, get some playing time at right or left tackle. Their defense is also a bottom unit in the NFL. They lost key defensive players over the offseason. Listen, they're not going to generate a lot of pressure. They don't have a great front four, and they also don't have a great secondary either outside of Budda Baker. This defense could easily be the worst in the NFL, even if Jonathan Gannon is a defensive head coach. And I'll be quick and painless on this one. I think that the Arizona Cardinals go 3-14 this season. I don't really buy into Jonathan Gannon as a head coach. I mean, it must have been real easy to coach that Eagles defense that was just swarming at the defensive line, had a phenomenal secondary and linebacker core. And I really think the Cardinals should just tank. They should just use this year as a mulligan and start building towards the future, and I have them projected as the #1 overall pick of the draft. So hopefully that's the positive to take out from this. Moving on to the Los Angeles Rams, they're also in a similar situation to the Cardinals. However, the main difference from the Cardinals is that the Rams were able to win it all. In the 2021 to 2022 NFL season, they were Super Bowl champions, defeating the Bengals in the Super Bowl. But this season, they came back down to earth and had a 5-12 season after winning the Super Bowl. That can be attributed to a lot of injuries. They had a really tough strength of schedule this year, and, they had some key injuries to key players like Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald. But listen, I don't really care that they're going to struggle this year. They struggled last year a lot. They're going to struggle for years to come as they're starting the rebuild. But they won it all. They went all in, and they won the Super Bowl. That's what matters in the NFL. They were able to reach the pinnacle, and I'm perfectly fine with them starting their rebuild because that's the right franchise move anyways. But they were undeniably one of the biggest losers in free agency. Out of their top 15 free agents, they were only able to retain one of them. That was Coleman Shelton. They lost some pretty big names in free agency, such as Odell Beckham Jr. going to the Ravens, Bobby Wagner going back to Seattle, and they traded away Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins. With the 23rd worst DVOA in 2022, I don't really see how it changes as Matthew Stafford was injured a lot last season. He had a UCL scare. He had a season-ending neck injury. Cam Akers is an inefficient running back. And outside of Cooper Kupp, they have a weak wide receiver core. And speaking about their offensive line, they do not really have a good offensive line. They have one of the bottom 5 units possibly. I would expect this offense to struggle even with their starters on the field. I think the defense is another potential bottom unit in the NFL. Overall, outside of Aaron Donald, there isn't a lot of continuity from that Super Bowl team. A lot of guys have either walked in free agency or have been traded away. And this is Aaron Donald's potential last year before retiring. They also have the 9th hardest strength of schedule, which does not help their odds. And yeah, if you were to tell me that the Rams were going to heavily struggle this year, I would believe you tenfold. I think that the Rams are a potential top 5 pick, and that they should start focusing on looking at their quarterback of the future. I have them going 5-12 and pretty much struggling throughout the entire year. The futures of Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and Sean McVay are really still up in the air. I think that the Rams will heavily struggle, but I like that they're starting to head towards a rebuild. I feel like the Seattle Seahawks defied all odds and somehow made the playoffs in 2022 when me and many others suspected that they were going to be a losing team. I don't know where Geno Smith came from last year. He had near pinpoint accuracy at most times during the season. That development can really be attributed to Pete Carroll, who has not only developed quarterbacks in the NFL, but also in college at USC. And Geno Smith, man, he threw for 30 touchdowns. He led the league in completion percentage. And that's probably why they extended him for 3 years, as well as signing Julian Love, Drummond Jones, and bringing back Bobby Wagner. Not to mention they had a phenomenal draft, drafting Devin Witherspoon 5th overall, and Jackson Smith-Njigba 20th overall. And also getting quality guys like Zach Charbonnet, Derek Hall, and Olusegun Oluwatimi. I gave their draft an A and had them as my 4th highest graded draft. I wouldn't be surprised at all if their offensive unit wasn't top 10 this year. They were 4th in offensive DVOA last year, but I think that could take a significant increase this year. Geno Smith will be in the 2nd year of the system. You've got a good running back duo in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. You arguably have the best wide receiver core in the NFL if you account for DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. You have a tight end rotation that goes 3 deep with Noah Fant, Will Dissly, and Cody Parkinson. And your offensive line should only get better with maturity like Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas going into their 2nd year. And then when we look at the defense, I think that the defense should take a step up this year. They were 21st in defensive DVOA, but they were bottom 5 against the run, especially in their interior defensive line. Signing Drummond Jones over the offseason should hopefully help the run game a little bit, as well as drafting Derek Hall, and as well as the signing of Bobby Wagner as a run stuffer, but I think teams still will run the ball against them efficiently. Really unfortunate that Jordan Brooks tore his ACL against the Jets last season, but they have Devin Bush in as substitute. But man, did Pete Carroll really try to recreate the Legion of Boom. They go 3 deep at cornerback with Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, and Kobe Bryant, and 3 deep at safety with Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, and Julian Love. Last year, they had the 13th hardest strength of schedule, and this year they repeat that with the 13th hardest. But boy, am I excited for their offense this year. With the NFC looking relatively weak compared to the AFC, I had the Seahawks flying through their NFC matchups and going 11-6. Even if they don't reach 11 wins, I still think that they are a 10-win team. Even though I essentially have them going 11-6, potentially an inflated record, they are still the 6th seed compared to the Cowboys, who I have the same record of. In my render and playoffpredictor.com, the Cowboys ended up having a harder strength of schedule. But I'm very excited for the Seahawks offense this year. And of course, last but not least, I have the San Francisco 49ers winning the NFC West division again. The 49ers are just such a talented team on both levels. Their offense is such a cohesive top unit. Quite literally, regardless of the quarterback they have, they rolled in Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, and they're still able to find success. And then obviously their defense was the number 1 unit in football last year. Last year they went 13-4 and made it all the way to the NFC Championships, but unfortunately lost to the Eagles, who made it to the Super Bowl. That loss is obviously heavily attributed to Brock Purdy tearing his UCL in that game, and the quarterbacks had to rotate in 4 quarterbacks, including Christian McCaffrey, who even got snaps at QB. But looking at their offseason acquisitions, they signed Javon Hargrave to a massive 4-year deal. They re-signed Jake Brendel to a 4-year deal and also signed Sam Darnold. They did lose guys like Mike McGlinchey, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Samson Ebukam, but I wouldn't consider Jimmy Garoppolo and Mike McGlinchey the biggest losses, as in my opinion, both those players were pretty much overpaid. The Niners offense was 6th in DVOA last year, with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, the last overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, starting the majority of the snaps after Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance both suffered ankle injuries that sidelined them for the season. And he stepped up big time. His favorite target was George Kittle, who was a top 2 tight end. But the 49ers have a really nice running game with Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell, and their passing game is also phenomenal with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and Brandon Ayuk ended up being the 1 last year. The left side of their offensive line is pretty solid with Trent Williams, future Hall of Famer, and Aaron Banks and Jake Brendel, but their right side is what I'm really worried about with Spencer Buford and Colton McKivitz. Their defense should once again be a top 3 unit in the NFL minimum. They did lose defensive coordinator DeMichael Ryan to the Texans as he becomes their head coach. However, the defensive line is so talented that they can run out any coordinator, any scheme, and they're going to get after the quarterback with Javon Hargrave, Aaron Armstead, and Nick Bosa. Their linebacking core is also phenomenal with Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner, and their secondary is also really good with Charvarius Ward and Tunaloa Hufanga. However, they did lose depth with losing Emmanuel Mosley and Jimmy Ward this offseason. For this talented of a team, they have the 15th easiest strength of schedule, and I have the 49ers going 12-5 this year, not quite reaching 13-4 like they did last season. A big thing of that is because of the quarterback situation. As I previously mentioned, Brock Purdy tore his UCL in the postseason last year. If you were to ask me, I think Sam Darnold is going to be the starter for the first couple of games before Brock Purdy is fully healthy. And then once he's back, the offense should be perfectly fine, and the defense should carry them to wins throughout the entire year. I have them being the 2nd seed in the NFC as well. To recap, I had the 49ers winning the division, going 12-5 and being the 2nd seed in the NFC, the Seahawks going 11-6 and being the 6th seed, and the Rams going 5-12, and the Cardinals going 30-14, getting the #1 overall pick in the draft. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know your predictions for each of these NFC West teams. Let me know your thoughts about this video. And as always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.